The world's top performers aren't relying on willpower. They're using a simple, repeatable focus ritual that flips the brain from chaos to clarity in minutes. In this video, the curtain gets pulled back on the exact technique millionaires swear by to lock into deep work, eliminate distractions, and produce results on command. Across a single session, watch how a three-step trigger, a short priming window, and structured work cycles combine to quiet mental noise and turn scattered energy into sustained momentum. See the precise setup, the science behind why it works, and real-time demonstrations so the routine can be copied immediately. Drawing on neuroscience insights about attention, dopamine, and habit loops, the video shows how to design an environment and sequence that makes focus inevitable, not optional. Expect practical tweaks for different schedules, a printable template, and a measurable way to track deep work gains within a week. By the end, there's a step-by-step plan to install the ritual in under 10 minutes, plus a first session checklist that sets up the next 14 days. Whether the goal is shipping a project, studying without burnout, or reclaiming mornings from procrastination, this is the focus system built to win in the real world. You're staring at the same screen you opened 2 hours ago. Tabs fighting for your attention, notifications nibbling at your focus, momentum slipping away. Now picture a hard cut. The same desk, 2 hours later, work shipped, knot in your chest gone, brain quiet and locked in. That flip is not luck. It's a switch, and you can install it today. Here's the truth from a clinician's eye. Your brain is not a motivation engine. It's a state machine. When you keep it in diffuse mode, everything feels uphill. When you snap it into a single task node, friction vanishes and output compounds. Millionaires are not superhuman. They run a predictable sequence that turns noise into a narrow beam of intent, then protect it with simple, repeatable guardrails. Across the next minutes, I'll guide you through the exact switch. 3 tiny triggers to ignite the system. A 2-minute priming window that calms interference. Work cycles that generate clean dopamine signals without burnout. Environmental cues that make focus automatic. A failsafe when you slip. A 14-day install that cements the habit. No fluff, no hacks for hacks' sake. Just a ritual you can run today and trust tomorrow. Ready to flip the mode and take back your next 2 hours? Cold open. The 2-hour flip. Look at the desk in front of you. The tabs aren't neutral. They're little open loops tugging at attention like frayed threads. Your phone lights up on the edge of vision. Messages whisper that everything is urgent and nothing is important. The clock is moving, but the work isn't. You tell yourself to try harder, to push a little more, or to find that mythical groove. Instead, you skim, you scroll, you stall. The mind drifts, the body fidgets, and the task that actually matters sits there like a locked door. Now hold that frame and jump ahead exactly 2 hours. Same desk, same task. But the draft is finished, the code runs, the practice set is complete. Your shoulders drop, breathing settles. There's a calm sense of done that wasn't there before. That flip from scatter to shipped feels like magic when it happens by accident. Today, it won't be an accident. Here's the truth that shifts everything. The brain isn't a motivation reservoir that gets topped up by inspirational quotes. It's a state machine. In diffuse mode, attention is wide, noisy, and easily hijacked. In node mode, attention is narrow, clean, and self-reinforcing. Most people try to reason their way into node mode with more thinking, more planning, more tabs. That's why they stall. The switch isn't a thought, it's a sequence. It's sensory, it's physical, it's environmental, and it's repeatable. High performers don't wait to feel ready. They run the switch and readiness appears as a byproduct. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. Once you feel it, you can't pretend you don't know how to get back there. No fluff, no mystical ritual, no secret app. A 3-step ignition that takes seconds to execute. A 2-minute priming window that lowers interference and makes the first keystroke inevitable. A work cycle that is short enough to start and long enough to matter. Then a downshift that preserves momentum instead of dumping you back into distraction. The entire package is small on purpose, compact enough to carry anywhere, strong enough to cut through mental noise on the worst day. You don't have to be a morning person. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to pull the switch. Picture the first moment of the cycle. The body cues the brain, not the other way around. Shoulders set, breath resets, posture aligns. The environment goes from loud to quiet. The task moves from abstract to concrete with one clear outcome. The timer starts, and with it, a new rule set. No debates, no negotiations, no mental bargaining. The mind starts to narrow without forcing it. Noise falls under the threshold. A surprising thing happens in the first 3 minutes. The work pulls you forward, not because you suddenly became disciplined, but because the state changed and the state does the heavy lifting. Focus is not the reward at the end of willpower. It is the opening condition that makes willpower unnecessary. Now, you might think this is for days when everything lines up. It's the opposite. The worse the day, the more valuable the switch. If you're tired, the switch cuts the decision layers. If you're anxious, the switch replaces vague dread with concrete action. If you're overwhelmed, the switch makes the next step smaller than your resistance. Under stress, the brain craves something controllable. This gives it a lever. Pull it, and attention obeys. Pull it again, and progress compounds. 2 hours later, the feeling isn't hype. It's quiet certainty that today counted. What you're about to install is not a productivity trick. It's a way to protect the sharpest version of your mind for a short window and let compounding do the rest. You'll see the whole thing in motion. You'll understand why it works down to the level of signals and cues. You'll copy it with zero guesswork. Most of all, you'll experience the flip in real time, so there's no question left about whether this is for you. It is. The desk in front of you can hold two different futures. One is the familiar loop of trying and drifting. The other is the shipped version that closes the loop and frees up mental space. The difference between them is a switch you can run on command. Let's turn it on. Naming the switch, from noise to node. Right now, attention feels like a flashlight in a hurricane. It scans, it flickers, it catches on every moving thing. That's diffuse mode, wide, noisy, and easily hijacked. The switch we're installing is a move into what I call the node state. Think of a neural node as a locked docking point between a single outcome and the networks needed to create it. When the brain docks to that node, irrelevant inputs go dark, decisions compress, and effort feels lighter because the path narrows. This isn't about forcing discipline. It's about changing the operating mode so the work pulls you forward instead of you dragging yourself through it. Why node instead of focus matters. The word focus is vague and often moralized, which invites guilt and overthinking. Node is mechanical and practical. A node turns a blurry task, like write the chapter, into a specific binding. Write the first 300 words describing the core problem in plain language. That binding recruits the exact circuits needed and dampens those that generate noise, self-referential loops, and status checking. In node state, your brain isn't asking should I or what if. It's executing what now and next line. That shift is the difference between hours of friction and minutes of clean output. To snap into node state, the brain needs two conditions: a clear anchor and a clean channel. The anchor is the one-line outcome that defines what good looks like by the end of this block. The clean channel is a temporary environment where inputs don't compete with the task's sensory and cognitive demands. When these two are present at the same time, the anterior conflict signals drop, the executive network engages, and the default chatter quiets. You feel it as an almost physical click. Breathing steadies, vision narrows, the next action becomes obvious. If you've ever started a timer and suddenly everything got easier, you've tasted the node. Here's the liberating part. Nodes are created, not discovered. You don't wait for the perfect mood or the perfect plan. You define the outcome in one sentence. You remove anything that doesn't serve it for a short window, and you give your brain a runway just long enough to lift off. The power isn't in a massive routine. It's in a tiny, consistent switch that turns the same messy inputs into a coherent stream of action. Millionaires and top performers aren't wrestling their minds for hours. They're entering the node on purpose, then letting the state carry the weight. Once you label it, you can call it. Once you can call it, you can repeat it. In a few minutes, we'll build the ignition sequence that snaps you into this state on demand and holds you there long enough to ship something real. The trigger stack: breath, posture, intention. Switching brain modes starts with the body. You don't think your way into focus, you cue it. First, breath. One reset cycle shifts physiology from scattered to steady. Inhale through the nose, hold briefly to signal control. Long, slow exhale to drop background arousal. Repeat once more. Feel the chest unlock and the jaw release. That quiets the noise floor so the next cue lands. Second, posture. Sit or stand in a stance you reserve only for work cycles. Feet grounded, spine tall, shoulders set slightly back. This is not about looking rigid, it's about teaching the nervous system that this shape equals execution. When the body takes this shape, the brain predicts what follows and narrows attention to match. Now the ignition spark, intention. One line, written by hand or typed where you will work. What will be true 40 minutes from now that is not true yet? Make it concrete and measurable. Write the first 300 words of the problem chapter. Ship the function with passing tests. Memorize and recall 20 definitions. The more specific the outcome, the easier the brain recruits the right circuits and suppresses the wrong ones. Vague goals invite negotiation. Specific outcomes make the next action obvious. Read the line out loud once. Start the timer. The combination of breath reset, posture snap, and intention line is small by design, but together they create a doorway. Cross it and the state changes. Keep this stack fast, under 90 seconds. If it drags, the mind wanders and the door closes. If it's crisp, the door opens and stays open long enough to get lift. The sequence is always the same, so there is no debate. Breath to signal control, posture to anchor context, intention to define success. Over time, your brain begins to anticipate the work as soon as you take the position, and the breath becomes a conditioned trigger that drops you under the noise. This is how you make focus reliable on ordinary days and possible on bad ones. The goal isn't to feel inspired. The goal is to be switched on. Run the stack exactly. Keep it short. Then move immediately to the priming window where the environment gets tuned and the first keystroke becomes inevitable. The 2-minute priming window. This is the short runway that makes the first keystroke inevitable. You've run the trigger stack. Now the goal is to mute interference and align attention with a single outcome. Start by clearing the visual field. Close everything that is not serving the one-line intention. One window, one document, one timer visible. The brain treats every on-screen element as a potential task, so the fewer objects in view, the fewer decisions to make. Reduce auditory clutter next. Switch from entertainment audio to a neutral, consistent soundscape or silence. The aim is not hype, it is stability. Predictable sound lowers background vigilance so the executive networks can engage without scanning for novelty. Give your hands something immediate and task-congruent to do. Place the cursor exactly where the first action happens. If writing, position it at the first line and type the intention as a header. Then press Enter so the field is blank and ready. If coding, open the file and place the caret where the function begins. If studying, open the first card or problem set and preload the exact prompt. This removes the last micro-friction between deciding and doing. Now, set a visible countdown for 120 seconds. During this window, you are not producing final output. You are aligning systems. Breathe evenly. Read the intention once out loud. Touch the timer. Look at the single workspace. Let the mind settle into the boundaries you just created. If a stray thought pops up, do not fight it. Capture it in a tiny parking lot note off-screen and return your gaze to the work field. Treat interruptions like a passing train. Acknowledge, let it pass, eyes back to the track. Adjust posture once, then keep it. Nudge lighting to a neutral, consistent level. Remove objects that signal leisure or social status checking. The brain learns context rapidly. When this setup repeats, it becomes a conditioned cue. This space equals execution. At the 60-second mark, preview the first micro-action. Say it plainly. Write the opening sentence about the core problem. Implement the test for the edge case. Solve the first 2 definitions. The point is to decide the opening move while arousal is calm, not in the heat of the timer's first minute. At 5 seconds remaining, place your fingers where they will start. When the countdown hits 0, there is no ceremony. You begin. The first action is small by design, because small actions create quick proof, and quick proof flips the brain from hesitation to momentum. If anxiety spikes, shrink the action further, but never delay the start. The priming window is strict on time, because strict edges make habits sticky. 2 minutes is long enough to quiet noise and short enough to prevent drift. Used consistently, this window becomes a bridge from intention to motion. The mind stops negotiating because the body already knows the sequence. You feel the click. The work pulls you forward. Now you're ready for the first deep work cycle to lock in and build pace. The work cycle architecture. This is where the switch becomes output. You are not chasing a perfect streak of hours. You are building short, repeatable arcs that create progress on command. Set a clear block length that matches the task's cognitive load. For language and creative synthesis, 40 minutes is a sweet spot because it's long enough to get past surface friction and short enough to finish with gas in the tank. For analytical build work, 50 minutes can work if the scope is narrow. For memory and study, 25 minutes keeps recall fresh and prevents drift. What matters most is that the block is decided before you start, visible on a timer, and honored like a meeting with the future version of you. Define the block with one outcome and one integrity rule. The outcome is the artifact that will exist if the block succeeds. The integrity rule is the boundary that protects the block from leaks. No switching windows, no inbox, no search unless it directly serves the next line of work. Integrity matters more than minutes because it trains the brain to trust that when a block starts, the world shrinks to fit the task. That trust removes negotiation, and negotiation is where momentum dies. Start the timer and immediately perform a micromark within the first 60 seconds. A micromark is a small, irreversible step that signals commitment. Write the first sentence, create the test file, start the problem set, and enter the first answer. Micromarks convert intention into motion, and motion stabilizes attention. Use mid-block checkpoints to keep the mind from drifting into meta-thinking. At the 10-minute mark, glance at the outcome line and ask, "Am I still moving toward this exact thing?" If yes, continue. If no, cut scope without pausing the timer and make the next action smaller. Shrinking scope beats breaking state. If you hit resistance, switch to a 2-minute surge. Type continuously about the problem, sketch the function scaffold, or outline the substeps you will execute in the next 5 minutes. Surges clear static and often reveal the next obvious move. Keep the environment stable. Do not add tools mid-block. Do not organize. Do not polish. Build. The polish belongs to a different block. End caps matter as much as starts. In the final 2 minutes, do not run the clock to zero on raw production. Protect the next block by leaving a visible breadcrumb. Write a one-line next action at the top of the page, stub the next function, or highlight the next problem to solve. This removes the heaviest friction at the next start and stops your brain from spinning on open loops during the break. Then log 2 numbers: minutes of deep work and session integrity as a percentage. Numbers turn vague feelings into feedback. You'll see quickly that a shorter block with 95% integrity beats a longer one with leaks. This reframing changes your relationship to time. You stop glorifying hours and start valuing clean cycles. Between blocks, insert a short recovery that resets the system without inviting distraction. Stand up. Change visual distance by looking far away for 20 seconds. Drink water. Avoid screens. The point is to let the attentional system downshift so the next block does not start with residue fatigue. Most people sabotage their day by cramming shallow tasks into the cracks between deep work. Resist that urge. Keep shallow work outside the cluster of blocks or batch it after the cluster ends. When you run 2 to 3 clean cycles, compounding kicks in. The second block is faster to start because the breadcrumb is waiting. The third block is smoother because the brain trusts the rhythm. This architecture is forgiving by design. If you break a rule, do not restart the timer or punish yourself with a longer session. Return to the outcome, perform a micromark immediately, and continue. Integrity recovers in seconds if you act fast. Progress is a staircase of short, high-quality cycles, not a single heroic marathon. When you stack these arcs across days, everything changes. You feel lighter starting, calmer while working, and satisfied shutting down. The switch gave you entry. The priming made the first keystroke inevitable. The cycle makes the result non-negotiable. Now you're ready to build the room around the ritual, so the environment itself becomes the on switch for concentration. Environment as a cue engine. Make the room do half the work so the brain doesn't have to. The goal is simple. When you enter this space in this configuration, your nervous system predicts execution and narrows attention before a single thought. Start by stripping visual noise. Every object in view is a silent suggestion, so remove anything that doesn't serve the one-line outcome for this block. One screen or one notebook, a timer, and the specific tools needed for the next action. Put everything else out of sight. This is not minimalism for aesthetics, it's friction control. Fewer inputs mean fewer decision branches, and fewer branches mean faster entry into the state. Tune the sensory layer to be stable and boring in the best way. Set lighting to a neutral, consistent level that you reuse for every work cycle. If possible, keep color temperature cooler in the morning and slightly warmer later in the day, but never dramatic within a session. Sound should be either silence or a predictable texture with no lyrics and minimal variation, so the brain stops scanning for novelty. Choose one soundscape and commit to it for 2 weeks, because consistency turns it into a conditioned cue. Smell can be a powerful trigger as well. A single clean scent used only during deep work becomes a switch your brain recognizes in seconds. Engineer the path of least resistance to start and the path of greatest resistance to stray. Preload the exact file, cursor position, and reference you need. Place your device in a mode where only whitelisted apps function during the block. If that's not possible, physically relocate the phone out of reach and line of sight. Use dumb friction against distraction. A chair that requires you to stand to reach your phone, a laptop stand that hides the touch bar for app switching, a keyboard shortcut that toggles a blank desktop with the work window alone. You're not relying on willpower. You're rearranging the terrain so the downhill route is the one you want. Embed a visible commitment artifact in the space, an intention card placed above the screen that states the outcome for this block and the integrity rule. The eye will land there when it wanders, and the card pulls the mind back without an internal debate. Keep a small parking lot pad out of frame for stray thoughts. When something pops up, capture it in 6 words or less, then eyes back to the task. This preserves flow without pretending interruptions won't happen. They will. Your system absorbs them and returns you to the track in seconds. Design entry and exit cues that bookend the session. Entry is the same chair position, the same lamp angle, the same timer placement, the same breath. Exit is the same downshift. Save, breadcrumb, close, stand. Repetition turns these into a rhythm your brain trusts. Trust is what eliminates negotiation at the start of the next block. If working in shared spaces, create a portable environment. Noise-canceling headphones with a single playlist, a folding laptop stand, a travel-sized lamp, or consistent screen brightness setting, a pocket intention card. Your environment is now a kit. Wherever you deploy it, your brain knows what to do. Guard the boundary. A door is the best cue. If there isn't one, create a symbolic door, a specific jacket on the chair, a sign on the desk edge, a light that's on only during cycles. Communicate the meaning of that symbol to anyone who shares the space. Not available until the timer hits 0. Every boundary you honor teaches your attention system that this window matters. After a week, you'll feel the click when you take your seat. After 2 weeks, you'll enter the state faster than you can explain it. That's the point. The space carries you. The cues do the talking. Your brain follows. The downshift protocol ends powerfully, not abruptly. The way a block ends determines how easily the next one begins, so this protocol protects momentum like an asset. 2 minutes before the timer ends, stop pushing output and switch to safeguarding the next start. First, snapshot the state. Save the file. Name it clearly. Place the cursor where the very next action will happen. Write a single line at the top that tells your future self what to do when you return. Keep it so obvious you could execute it half asleep. This line is a bridge over the resistance that usually appears at the start of a new block. Without that bridge, you'll negotiate, wander, and leak the gains you just built. Now discharge cognitive residue. Open loops ring in the background and drain attention long after a session ends. Take 60 seconds to list any lingering tasks, questions, or ideas that tried to steal your attention. Park them in a dedicated capture space outside the work window. This isn't planning, it's unloading. The goal is to exit clean. If a necessary reference is open, bookmark the exact anchor and close the tab. Leaving clutter invites your next session to start with sorting instead of building. The protocol keeps the runway clear so you can roll straight into acceleration. Shift physiology to mark closure. Stand up, stretch the chest and hip flexors to undo the posture of work. Breathe in for a steady count, exhale longer to let arousal drop. Look far away for 20 seconds to reset visual focus and reduce screen strain. Drink water. These tiny acts are not breaks for comfort. They are signals that the cycle is over and the system can reset. When the body shifts state on purpose, the mind follows. You'll feel a subtle release instead of an abrupt crash, which preserves the desire to begin again rather than avoid the chair. Set a boundary on re-entry to noise. For the next 3 to 5 minutes, do not open inboxes, feeds, or chats. If you must check logistics, time box it with a visible countdown and return before the bell. Most people lose entire afternoons by letting shallow tasks flood the gap between deep work blocks. This protocol is the levee. It keeps the river in its channel, so progress compounds. If you're done for the day, do a micro shutdown. Log deep work minutes and session integrity, glance at tomorrow's first intention, and place the intention card where your eyes will land in the morning. Then leave the workspace as a single clear invitation. Use rituals to make the downshift automatic. Same closing keystrokes, same chair pushback, same light off, same line written for the next start. Repetition turns this into muscle memory. When you can end without thinking, you eliminate lingering decisions and free cognitive bandwidth for life outside work. That is not a luxury, it's part of the system. Recovery is what lets you return with a full battery instead of surviving on fumes. If a block went poorly, the protocol still applies. Log the integrity honestly, write an even smaller next action, and exit clean. The point is not perfection, it's protecting the chain. When the downshift is consistent, the next lift is easy. The day stops being a series of stops and starts and becomes a rhythm you can trust. That rhythm is how 2 hours turn into results you can see and momentum you can feel. Failure-resistant focus. Even the best switch will slip. The difference between losing a day and saving it is how fast recovery happens. Treat derailments as part of the system, not exceptions. The first line of defense is the instant restart. If you catch yourself drifting, do not audit the mistake or rewrite the plan. Return to the one-line intention, perform a micro mark within 10 seconds, and let action pull you back. The brain follows what the hands are doing. 10 keystrokes rebind attention faster than 10 explanations. If the derailment is noisy and sticky, run a 90-second cognitive purge. Open a blank note. Dump every thought that's grabbing at you in short, blunt lines. Assign each to later or never, then close the note. Purges clear static by acknowledging the noise without feeding it. You're not solving all of it. You're moving it out of the lane so the task can proceed. When anxiety spikes and the task feels too big to face, shrink the window until resistance loses its grip. Use a 2-minute toe-in. Start the timer for 120 seconds and do only the first visible step. Write a single sentence that states the problem in plain language. Create the empty test and name it. Read and answer the first definition. The point is not to be productive. It is to re-establish control and reopen the channel. Once the 2 minutes are done, choose deliberately. Either continue into a full block or run one more toe-in. Each success proves to your nervous system that progress is safe, which lowers the threat response that fuels avoidance. Interruptions from outside will happen. Plan for them like weather, not like failure. If the block is cut short, log the integrity honestly. Write an even smaller next action at the top of the work and run the downshift protocol in miniature. Save, breadcrumb, stand, breathe, and schedule a specific re-entry window. If you can restart within 15 minutes, treat it as the same session with a fresh timer. If you can't, commit to a short recovery block later the same day. Momentum recovers best on the same calendar day, even if it's only 10 focused minutes. This keeps identity intact. You are the kind of person who returns, not the kind who waits for a perfect tomorrow. Build guardrails that prevent repeated slips. Convert the most common leak into friction. If context switching to search derails you, write the query as a placeholder in brackets and forbid the browser during the block. If messages drag you out of the lane, put the device in a literal different room or inside a bag across the space, and let a single, loud emergency channel remain available elsewhere. If perfectionism freezes your hands, set a non-negotiable ugly first pass rule for the first 5 minutes of every block. Lowering the standard at the start unlocks speed that raises quality by the middle. Quality arrives through momentum, not before it. Use language that keeps your mind in execution rather than judgment. Not "I broke focus," but "I lost the thread, and now I pick it up here." Not "I wasted the morning," but "the next 10 minutes count, and I'm in." Words matter because they shape prediction. Prediction shapes state. State shapes action. Recovery is less about motivation and more about staying in motion with the smallest possible step. If a day truly collapses, protect the chain with a 1-block minimum. 1 clean block is a save. No blocks is a story you don't want to rehearse. The switch gets you into the mode. The priming makes the first keystroke inevitable. The cycle creates output. This piece ensures none of it depends on a perfect day. With failure resistance in place, the system survives reality and compounds anyway. Personalization by cognitive profile. One system, 3 lanes, all pointed at the same switch. The fastest way to make this stick is to align the ritual with how the brain processes the work in front of it. If the task demands open-ended creation, the mind needs enough freedom to explore without losing the thread. If the task demands precision and logic, the mind needs stable parameters and fewer sensory variables. If the task demands encoding and recall, the mind needs cycles that refresh memory before fatigue erases gains. Personalization isn't indulgence, it's engineering. When the ritual fits the cognitive load, resistance drops and momentum rises. For makers and creatives, the priority is protecting exploratory depth while preventing perfectionism from hijacking the start. Use a 35-7 rhythm that invites immersion without burning out the line of thought. Keep the environment neutral but not sterile. Low variation ambient sound, soft lateral light, and a single tactile anchor like an analog intention card placed in your sightline. The intention should describe mood and meaning in one line, then immediately ground it with a concrete outcome. Begin each block with an ugly first pass rule for 5 minutes. By lowering the standard at the opening, you bypass self-critique and let momentum raise quality mid-block. End with a breadcrumb that captures the next beat of the idea before it evaporates. For coders and analysts, the priority is constraint and clarity. Use a 50-10 rhythm when working inside a well-defined scope. Drop to 40 Mr. 8 when the problem is ambiguous. Optimize for silence or a consistent low-frequency noise floor. Bright, crisp lighting and a stable font size reduce micro-irritations that cause context switching. The intention line should name the exact unit of progress. Pass one failing test, finalize the query, refactor function X without changing output. Start each block with a 2-minute scaffold. Outline the functions, define inputs and outputs, mark the test you will make pass. This front-loads structure, so production feels like filling a mold rather than inventing the container as you go. For students and learners, the priority is encoding, retrieval, and spacing. Use 25-5 cycles with clear alternation between input and output. The intention line must be testable. Recall 20 definitions verbatim, solve 5 problems from set B with steps shown, summarize pages 12-18 in 6 sentences. Begin with retrieval, not rereading. Answer before checking, then compare and correct. In the final 3 minutes, create active recall prompts for the next block and place them at the top of the page. This turns the next start into a quiz that reignites engagement quickly. Keep sensory cues consistent across sessions so the environment itself becomes a memory cue for the material. Across all profiles, standardize the trigger stack and priming window, then customize cycle length, sound, lighting, and intention framing. If a block feels heavy to start, either the unit of progress is too vague or the environment is carrying too many signals that don't belong. Shrink the outcome to something undeniably finishable within the block and remove one sensory variable. If attention flags mid-cycle, use a 2-minute surge tailored to the profile. Free-write the problem for creatives, stub tests for coders, rapid-fire recall for learners. If emotion spikes, reduce the demand on quality and increase the demand on movement for 5 minutes. Motion generates proof. Proof reduces fear. Finally, create a tiny personal scoreboard that matches the profile's real wins. Makers track shipped artifacts per day. Coders track passing tests or merge diffs. Learners track correct recalls and pages converted into prompts. One metric is enough. When the brain sees proof in its own language, it believes the system works and stops fighting the start. That belief is rocket fuel. It makes the switch faster, the priming calmer, the cycle cleaner. Personalization turns a good ritual into a permanent capability. When the ritual fits the mind shows up for the ritual. Proof of work, artifact tracking. If it isn't visible, the brain discounts it. You can finish a clean block and still feel behind if there's no proof on the table. Artifact tracking turns invisible effort into tangible progress your mind can trust. Start by defining what counts as an artifact for the work you're doing. A paragraph written, a function merged, a problem set solved, a page of recall prompts completed. Artifacts are concrete, countable, and reviewable later. They are not time spent or apps opened. At the end of every block, capture the artifact and name it in a way your future self can recognize at a glance. Use date first names and verbs that describe what got done. When you scan your log, you should see a row of small wins that tell a clear story. Built, fixed, drafted, solved, tested, shipped. Pair artifacts with two numbers that matter more than any productivity myth: deep work minutes and session integrity. Deep work minutes are the minutes inside the timer devoted to the single outcome. Session integrity is the percentage of that block kept leak-free from context switches. A 35-minute block at 95% integrity beats a 60-minute block with heavy switching. This reframing changes your relationship with time. You stop chasing hours and start stacking quality. Write the two numbers at the top of the artifact or in a simple ledger. Over a week, patterns appear. You'll notice which time of day produces your best integrity, which tasks demand shorter cycles, and which environments lift or lower your score without you realizing it. Make review effortless. At the end of the day, pull your artifacts into a single line of proof. 3 sentences that state what exists now that didn't exist this morning. A paragraph shipped on Chapter 2, a test harness that catches the failing case. 20 recall prompts converted and answered correctly. Close the loop by linking each artifact to a breadcrumb for tomorrow's first block. This simple handoff keeps momentum alive overnight, so you start with motion instead of hesitation. On Fridays, do a 5-minute weekly proof. List the top 6 artifacts and circle the one that moved the needle most. The point isn't to celebrate endlessly. It's to train your brain to believe that clean cycles compound into outcomes that matter. Avoid vanity metrics, lines of code, pages read, hours logged, tabs closed. None of these guarantee meaningful progress. If the artifact doesn't stand on its own as useful or testable, you're counting activity, not results. Trim your system until only real proof remains. If a day runs off the rails, use artifact tracking to rescue identity. Ship one tiny artifact before you shut down. A stubbed outline, a passing microtest, 5 correct recalls. The artifact is a marker in the ground that says the chain is still intact. You ended as a builder, not a browser. That story matters more than the size of the output, because it's the story you'll believe tomorrow when you sit down to start again. Keep the log human-friendly. 1 page, 1 column, 1 glance to understand the week. No complex dashboards, no data paralysis. The goal is conviction, not bureaucracy. When you can point to a row of small, honest artifacts, the brain relaxes, confidence rises, and starting the next block feels natural. Proof reduces anxiety because it removes ambiguity. Proof builds momentum because it makes wins undeniable. And proof fuels grit because it shows that even on rough days, the work leaves tracks. That's how you go from hoping to produce to expecting to produce. You're not guessing anymore. You're tracking a system that works, and the evidence is right in front of you. The 14-day installation plan. You're not building a new identity in one heroic sprint. You're installing a repeatable switch so clean it survives ordinary chaos. For the next 2 weeks, the goal is consistency, not intensity. Day 1 begins with a single promise. 2 clean blocks, each with a written outcome and a visible timer. Keep it modest. A 25-minute block in the morning and a 25-minute block in the afternoon or evening. Run the trigger stack, the 2-minute priming window, the work cycle, and the downshift protocol exactly as described. Log deep work minutes and session integrity, then write a 1-line breadcrumb for the next start. That breadcrumb is the bridge you'll cross tomorrow without thinking. Days 2 and 3 repeat the same shape. Do not increase time yet. Focus on making the entry automatic. Same breath, same posture, same intention line, same timer, same exit. You're training prediction. When the brain predicts execution, resistance collapses. On day 4, step up to a 35-minute morning block and keep the second block at 25. If integrity drops below 85%, you don't push longer, you tighten the environment. Trim one visual input, move the phone farther, shorten the scope of the outcome. This is an engineering problem, not a moral one. Each day ends with 3 lines of proof that state what exists now that didn't exist in the morning. You're teaching your mind to trust evidence, not moods. Days 5 through 7 stabilize at 2 35-minute blocks. If the work is analytical and scoped, you can try a 48 pattern in the first block. If it's creative or ambiguous, stay at 35 and use an ugly first pass for the first 5 minutes. Keep breaks screen light. Stand, breathe, look far, drink water, and avoid an inbox flood. On day 7, do a 5-minute weekly proof. List 6 artifacts from the week, circle the one that mattered most, and write the first intention for day 8 at the top of your workspace. This closes the loop and primes your return before you ever sit down. The point is to wake up with momentum pre-installed, not negotiated. Days 8 through 10 introduce a 50-minute morning block if your integrity has consistently stayed above 85%. If not, stay at 35 and sharpen boundaries. Add the mini parking lot for stray thoughts if you haven't yet. Choose a single, consistent soundscape for the whole week and stop hunting for perfect playlists. Consistency turns cues into switches. If anxiety spikes, use the 2-minute toe-in at the start of the block and then continue. If perfectionism resurfaces, enforce an ugly first 5 rule again. If interruptions cut a session, log honestly, leave a breadcrumb, and schedule a 10-minute recovery block the same day. Recovery on the same day protects identity. You return because that's who you are now. Days 11 through 14 are about consolidation, not heroics. Keep one long block and one short block, or 3 25-minute blocks if your schedule is fractured. The only non-negotiable is integrity. Protect the boundary. Whitelist or remove. Close, don't minimize. Speak the intention line out loud once at the start of each block. End each block with a breadcrumb so the next start is frictionless. At the end of day 14, review your ledger. Count deep work minutes, average integrity, and total artifacts. You should see a pattern. Faster starts, cleaner mid-block recovery, easier endings, and less dread before sessions. That's the system doing its job. The switch is now a habit loop anchored in cues, sequence, and proof. If a day collapses anywhere in the 2 weeks, salvage the chain with a single clean 12-minute block. Prime for 2, work for 10, downshift for 1, log, and leave a breadcrumb. 1 is infinitely better than 0 because it preserves the story you're telling your nervous system. You are someone who returns on the same day. You don't wait for motivation. You run the sequence and let state do the heavy lifting. At the end of the challenge, choose your default template for ordinary days, 2 35-minute blocks or a 50 plus 25. Keep it simple. Your environment is now a cue engine. Your trigger stack is reflex. Your priming window flips the first keystroke from effort to inevitability, and your downshift protects momentum. You're not guessing anymore. You're installing results on command, and the next topic will close the loop, so this becomes your new normal. Close the loop. Install the switch today. This isn't about squeezing more hours or chasing motivation. It's about flipping a predictable switch and letting state carry the weight. You've seen how the sequence works in the real world. The trigger stack snaps the system into readiness. The 2-minute priming window removes negotiation. The work cycle turns intention into output. The downshift protects momentum. The recovery plays rescue rough days. Personalization lowers resistance. Artifacts create proof, and the 14-day plan locks it in. Now it's time to make the promise real on the very next block. Not someday, not when it's convenient, but today, in the next 10 minutes. That is the hinge. Act while the circuit is warm and the path is clear. Sit, breathe, set the posture, write the one-line outcome, and start a single 25-minute block right now. If that feels heavy, run the 2-minute toe-in first and let movement shrink the fear. Put the phone out of reach, choose one soundscape, load the exact file, place the cursor where it begins, and touch the timer. When it starts, make the first micro mark immediately. That small, irreversible move is the line between watching a video and building a different day. Follow the integrity rule with 0 exceptions. When the block ends, leave the breadcrumb sentence that tells tomorrow's self exactly where to begin and log the 2 numbers that matter: deep work minutes and session integrity. That's the loop closed. Intention becomes motion. Motion becomes proof. Proof becomes identity. Expect friction and meet it with smaller steps, not bigger pressure. If the mind pushes back, shrink scope until it can't object. If life interrupts, save, breadcrumb, stand, and schedule a same-day recovery block to protect the chain. If perfectionism barks, enforce an ugly first 5 and let quality rise mid-cycle. You don't need a perfect day to win. You need one clean block that starts now, then another tomorrow, then a rhythm the brain can predict and trust. 2 weeks from today, the chair, the breath, the card, the timer, and the lamp will be a single command. Sit and your brain will narrow because that's what it has learned to do. That's not hype. That's conditioning. Here's the decisive moment. Choose your default template, 2 35-minute blocks or a 50 plus 25. Write today's first intention in one line and speak it once out loud. Start the clock. When you finish, tell the world in one sentence what you shipped. Keep it simple, keep it honest, and let the evidence stack. This is how millionaires and top performers make focus look effortless. It isn't effortless, it's engineered. You have the blueprint. The switch is yours. Pull it now and let the next 2 hours tell a different story than the last two.